Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Happy Tuesday.
It's a wonderful sunny day before the Santa Ana winds blow in to California. It's not the summer wind here, it's more the autumn wind.
I know we've been having some lovely fall weather where you can wear a sweater. Typically it's 80-ish by 2 p.m. But the next couple days are going to be pretty hot. Hey, cheers, man.
Yeah, we gotta cheers our coffee.
Cheers. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So there was some news in California last week, which feels like last month for some reason.
Probably because we had 17 events every day in the last week. In the last 4 weeks, actually.
Yeah, Ashley went and looked back at our calendar. We're like, why are we so tired?
It's just
every weekend's been
so many good
jam-packed.
things,
Yeah.
Really good things, fun things, exciting things, but just tired people over here.
Yeah. So wanted to talk about last week's news with the governor of California, Governor Gavin Newsom, who's definitely not running for president. I'm gonna put this in airplane mode. He wants you to know he's definitely not running for president.
Definitely not running.
No. Do I need to put yours in airplane mode too? So Governor Newsom didn't sign a bill that a lot of parents were worried about, AB1078, which would basically terrorize parents in family court over the custody of their children. But he did sign AB1078, which has been reported in the media as an attack on parent rights, and I don't think we should accept that frame at all. I do believe it may strip school boards of certain authorities that they were thought to have had prior to the AB 1078 being signed, but parent rights aren't touched by it in my view.
I can see where parents might think that, because I think a lot of us, I know even me in the past, but we don't realize the control that we still have over the curriculum and the materials that are being put in front of our kids. You think it's our hands are tied, the school board or the state, but parents have control over that. Parents have a voice, and parents have every right to show up and stop certain things from being put in front of the kids.
Yeah, that's why our title today is Parent Rights Are Greater Than AB 1078 and Most Everything Else in California Public Education. And even the governor, Gavin Newsom, agrees with me. Last month, he gave a speech in a library that they had to leave because it was sweltering hot in there, which is its own metaphor in and of itself with the state of our HVAC systems in public schools in California. But he said the most eloquent thing on parental rights, because he's had the top minds in the legal department, the Department of Justice at the state, digging around education law, education code for the state and federal laws that we have that govern school districts in California. And he said school districts must have significant engagement with parents when it comes to the LCAP process, which is the budget, and when it comes to the review and approval of curriculum, not just prior to it being established, but also after it's been established, to give parents have a right to have a say, to say, I want to opt my kid out of this. I challenge this book that is, being used as part of the curriculum. I want to review the teacher training material that was used, because lately we've had teacher trainings that have trampled on parental rights. So it's our own district in Escondido Unified, who just lost a huge federal case regarding their parent notification policy, or the fact that they require school staff to actually actively keep secrets from parents, to deceive parents, all in the name of what they claim is safety of the child. And we're not talking an abuse situation. This is absent abuse. But
of course, because if it is an abuse situation, they're mandated to report that. So the secrets shouldn't be being kept in the name of that will keep the child safe.
Yeah, no, the parents, it's their child. So, and that's the case in California. Parental rights are robust, but parents are the only ones who are going to advocate for their rights and exercise their rights.
And I think they get gaslit. They get gaslit when they go to sometimes request this material they'll be told, oh, you don't, either like you don't get to see that, or we don't have that, or in Anthony's case, it was like 4 months requesting a teacher training, and it was all different reasons why. First of all, they didn't have it. Second, we didn't want to interrogate staff, and eventually, months later, he obtained the copy, and it, it has some resources in it that were exactly kind of what we expected. But in any case that you are requesting that, you have a right to get it.
It was direct attacks on parental notification rights. It was minimizing those rights in our training, and I'll post it in the comments here. The training we gave to our teachers in the district
for 2 years
would have confused a reasonable educator, and we have proof. We've had teachers come and give public comment and repeat exactly what we've trained them to believe, that if a student comes to you and discloses their gender identity, they may be confiding in you and you only, and it may create an unsafe environment for them at home for you to let the parents know, or let alone let substitute teachers and fellow classmates know, which is the other side of the guidance that comes to us from the state. Is the best practice is to update the educational records of the student, so that if they want to be called a different name, that the substitute teacher is consistent with that request. The parents, are involved, because parents have the right to review the educational record of their child, and that educational record should be updated. So we have training in our public school system statewide that is amounting to an attack on the parent-to-child relationship that happened in Escondido, was mentioned in the federal court ruling against Escondido, the training that they had done in August of 2021 and August of 2022. Training Cajon Valley did in the same months and years, August 21, August 22.
We don't know if it was the same training, but it seems to be a very similar training, correct?
Yeah, that really covered parental notification policies with regard to gender ideology.
And these federal judges ruled that long-standing pre-existing laws don't allow that sort of behavior.
Yeah, and
we're training teachers to violate this parent-to-child relationship that is protected way back, like the most protected relationship in our schools. So
yeah, 100 years of Supreme Court rulings, and in the name of it's safer for the kid. That's the argument that is without evidence, I would argue.
Right, and who determined that it's safer?
GLSEN and the GLSEN and the Human Rights Campaign. I encourage anyone, I've done this before, go to hrc.org and just read the warlike language they use. State legislators, governors, the Supreme Court are attacking the bodies of trans youth, because they're passing laws that...
to this organization were in our proposed sex ed curriculum in Cajon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
That was not adopted by our board, but I do know there are some neighboring districts that have that sex ed curriculum with links. I believe if it's the same one, it would have the links to hrc.org, which, like Anthony said, go check it out.
And they do local activism.
Flags all over
I
the
signed up for their email alerts as a middle schooler. I told them, where my zip code is. And then I get invited to the Parkway Bowl, which is a local bowling alley. I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I signed up from the middle school workbook for the alerts. I started getting alerts about attacks on trans youth in middle schools, and then they invited me to the local bowling alley for a Bowling for Equality event. So if you're a middle schooler, you're signing up through this curriculum to these action alerts, being invited to local events. And the local event was it was a charity fundraiser, but it was adults drinking but selling raffle tickets to kids also, and kids who weren't there. It was inappropriate.
How were the raffle ticket amounts determined? If I was a kid and I walked in, maybe my mom dropped me off because it was a human rights event, so it seemed safe.
Yeah, have you seen those the not Catholic nuns, the nuns who were showing? What are they called? They're not called nuns. I don't want to... They mock the nuns.
That group.
The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence.
Yeah, and they dressed up for the Padre game or something.
Yeah,
right?
they dressed, two men dressed up like Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, selling raffle tickets to middle schoolers at the local bowling alley. $5 gets you one raffle ticket, $20 gets you a length of raffle tickets, equivalent to your inseam or your bust circumference. At Parkway Bowl, they have a PA system behind the sales counter. These people working for HRC selling raffle tickets, dressed in drag, were saying that if you wanted a longer strip of raffle tickets for your $20, you could use the bust circumference, which they announced the size and measurements over the loudspeaker at the local bowling alley. For $20, you could use the bust measurements of the, fella that was taller than me, there dressed in drag. So, and so I'd imagine if I had to guess, I'm like a 44 regular. I'm guessing he's probably a 50 something, so $20, you get a longer strip of raffle tickets. But you shouldn't sell raffle tickets to kids, period, right?
Well, but it's extra weird too. The inseam measurement was an option. Like, oh, you can give us $20 and we'll measure your inseam. Like, I don't care if you are male, female, straight, gay, drag, queen, whatever. If you're measuring my son's inseam, you sure as heck better be like the seamstress that I took him to go see to get his suit altered.
Yeah, so
that's weird.
It's
and I don't have a daughter, but I would be saying the same thing. If you were measuring her bust, you better be measuring her for her cheer uniform or something, like not just for a fun raffle game. That's weird. I mean, same thing. Like if I went to a fundraiser, what if I told you I came home and there were men measuring like my leg? It's so weird.
Yeah, it's a very odd way to sell raffle tickets, and you just don't sell raffle tickets to kids. So that's hrc.org. And they have, like I said, local activism. They solicit donations, private contact information. They send out what I would call propaganda that kind of makes it sound like we're in a battle for our lives if you're a middle schooler. A battle for our lives against state legislators, governors, judges, Supreme Court justices. So it's, not they're not playing the game like I don't know. It's just something you wouldn't have in education normally. This is very radical stuff. Like, sure, the First Amendment, you can have your beliefs, you can spread your message, but school isn't the place. It's not. You don't belong in a middle school workbook on sex ed saying to learn more about gender expansiveness, go here. And that's another thing. The teacher training that Cajon Valley did said, here's pre-K through third grade curriculum, links, resources, books you can download, worksheets you can download. Go here to get these resources. Well, there's a curriculum adoption process. As Governor Newsom so eloquently said, it requires a significant level of parent engagement prior to the adoption of the curriculum, and parents have the right, again, to review the curriculum once it's already established, including the teacher training materials and any supplementals, videos, things attached there too. Now, when I asked for that teacher training in our district, like you said earlier, it was like every diversionary tactic you could imagine thrown up to try and prevent me from seeing it. And I know why now, and I'm going to post it in here. Well, the links were,
it said right at the beginning of the training when he finally got a hold of it, the creator of the training said, you do not have my permission to record this training. It will not be recorded. And so that's kind of, to me as a parent, a red flag as well.
Yeah, well, when a school district is it's training its staff on law, which we do have to do from time to time because state law changes, right? And the second slide of that presentation demonstrates such a lack of understanding of the law with regard to like teacher training. If you're doing teacher training at a school district, it is definitely not a state secret. It is required to be provided to the parents upon request for review, especially when it touches on curriculum and parent notification matters. Like the required level of involvement in statute, again, I keep going back to what Newsom said, is significant with parents. So, and with the board when it comes to curriculum adoption, book curation, that sort of thing. So when you're telling teachers, go to these external sources, put these worksheets in front of your kids, they had hrc.org, the one I mentioned, has gender expansive youth curriculum for kindergartners through 5th grade, okay? and it's linked in this training, which I will put in. It's linked on the resources page 30.
Yeah,
I think,
so
something.
Anthony posted that training on our last live. We'll put it on here again. But make sure, I mean, it's enough when you're just going through it to be a little alarmed. But when you get toward some of the end pages that says resources, and that's where all these curriculum links are. And it's like K through first grade, second and third grade, fifth and sixth grade. And it's curriculum that, I mean, maybe I just don't know, but I don't know if it was adopted by the board before Anthony was on the board. If it was, I think us parents need to get engaged and start asking questions on whether or not did you just like sign off on this curriculum, or did you want this in our schools? And if you didn't want it in our schools, then you need to help us get it out, because it was presented to teachers as if it was what they are supposed to be using.
Yeah, and when it's parental notification, basically training the staff that, parental notification is really only required when you are teaching sex ed or about STDs. You can have all these other conversations about pronouns and gender identity and gender expansiveness with kindergartners. Here's the curriculum from HRC, a radical organization, to hand to these kids, and that you don't have to notify the parents. It's like anyway, so this is a training on law written by someone who isn't a lawyer, who has no apparent experience writing teacher trainings, especially not on law, and saying in the second slide, you do not have my permission to record this training, as if it's some sort of state secret, which demonstrates your lack of understanding of the law with regard to teacher trainings and parents' rights to see those. And then this fellow went on to become a board member for GLSEN San Diego, which is another member of what I call the groomer cartel. They ask kids very private information for home or safe address, sexual or romantic orientation. 6th, 7th graders, they're
On a
soliciting
Google
this information.
Form, right?
Yeah,
So who
GLSEN
knows
San
if
Diego.
it's even secure with all of this private information.
Offering them a $20 e-gift card to go to their doctor and secretly report back to the Trans Youth Project.
Secret shop their doctor.
Secret shop their doctor. So these, and I think Governor Newsom is pretty politically savvy when he was asked about, parents standing up across the state, across the political spectrum. This is like a 70-80% of parents issue. This isn't a Republican or Democrat issue going on. It's what secrets can the state keep from me about my child? That is like, you ask a parent, they're like, yeah, we don't want the government. Maybe the government in California right now is to a lot of people's liking in California. It probably is, because they elected them. But when you ask them, do you want the state to keep secrets about your child from you? That's a whole different ball game. And these parents, like I said, from across the political spectrum, there's parents in La Mesa, Spring Valley, the district,
across
neighboring
the political
to us.
spectrum, all different races, all different professions, backgrounds, stay-at-home parents, working parents, physicians, gay, straight. There are people from all over that want parents to have rights. It's not, I feel like when we first started kind of going to the school board on this stuff, you get kind of, I don't know if straw man is the right word, but it's like, oh, it's, the white conservative parents, or it's the Christians. And then in reality, the more events we go to, the more I find that it is not a certain type of person. It is parents that care about their kids and want to have the last say and know everything that's going on with their kids.
Yeah, and the federal court that ruled against Escondido Unified School District, another neighboring district to our north, who is the most comparable district to Cajon Valley, and it's K through 8 mostly. We have one charter high school and similar, amount of students, that sort of thing. So our most comparable district to the north just lost in federal court, and it may cost them in excess of $1 million to have lost. And it was 2 veteran teachers who sued and said, our job isn't to deceive parents about their child. You can't have a policy in this district that forces us to do that. It violates our religious rights. And the court seemed to agree on most of that. So
yeah, they explained that it was their job to partner with parents. And these, like Anthony said, long-time seasoned teachers. I think it's amazing that they stood up and did this, because it's setting precedent for the rest of us in California. Especially down here in Southern California, neighboring districts. That's a huge deal, with all the similarities that we have between the trainings, the curriculum, the
we have
rules.
we have an identical policy It's called Administrative Regulation 5145.3. It's the same policy that Chino, Rockland, Temecula, Marietta, Orange, school districts, and more, I'm missing some, have tried to address. It's this policy that just appeared in the court ruling against Escondido. It was said that the policy just appeared in their, their policies and procedures, and without board adoption, without public input. And this is a policy that, again, goes to the heart of parental notification between district staff and students and parents. So it like tried to fundamentally change that to where any district staff member now may have confidentiality with a student, not in the case of suspected abuse or anything like that, but just
in general.
Yeah, in general. And
yeah,
state
like
and federal law
like
doesn't support
patient
that.
To doctor thing, they were making it seem like
that
teachers have that same.
Not just
type
teachers,
of
principals, administrators, vice
they
principals,
don't have HIPAA in schools.
PE coaches,
there's a fly in here.
Whoever, which there's the court that ruled against Escondido called it a trifecta of harm. And when they say trifecta, they're referring to students, district staff, and parents, because you're creating an unsafe situation. Why do we have a fly in here?
There's a fly.
You're creating an unsafe situation, potentially, for staff, students, and parents, and it's a trifecta of harm. So we need to basically, I think, in our district and neighboring districts, Chino, lost in court against the state currently. Like, they got a temporary restraining order against their change, but their change required that the staff notify the parents. The existing rule requires that they don't. So both edges of that seem to be an issue. But the fact that this landed on all of our policies and procedures without board approval, without parent involvement, that it fundamentally changes parental notification, in that it's a trifecta of harm. It's like,
it is though. Think about how dangerous it is for a student if the argument is, well, if they're experiencing gender identity crisis, they're at a higher risk for suicide. How dangerous is it to not tell their parents if they actually are at a higher risk of suicide? Their parents should know.
For
Their
no
parents
good
should be
articulable
able-
reason. If
Yeah.
they say, I think my dad's gonna hurt me if you tell him, well, then the state, the school district, should notify the state if they think there's a real concern that the child will be abused by their parent or guardian. Then we have the mechanism for that. It's transparent. There's a process. There's reports generated. A judge will eventually look at that. That's a process, right?
Well, gosh,
where
and
you
think
keep it between a student and any district staff member. Maybe 999 times out of 1,000, nothing goes wrong in that scenario. But one time out of 1,000, or probably even higher rate than that, you may have a district staff member who uses, the fact that a student is confiding in them for something we wouldn't want a district staff member doing with the student, and that we're actually trained in that. So our district mandatory training includes grooming type behavior, and one of the grooming type behaviors is keeping secrets, between one adult district staff member and a student, for example. So it kind of runs counter to that.
I was going to say, think about how scary and dangerous it could be potentially too. You have a teacher that says, well, I can't tell their parents. I'm going to keep this secret because they could be harmed at home. They could be abused or put in harm's way if I tell the parent. So then we keep the secret, but then the parent finds out. Don't you think that abusive situation could be even worse after they find out you've been having a secret, confidential relationship with staff members at your school and hiding from them? I feel like if the kids
going home on the weekends
and abuse, and then you hide it, the abuse could be worse when they find out. So I don't know. I just feel like parents need to know what's going on with their kid, especially if they're at a heightened risk of mental illness or suicide.
Yeah, and that's what the message I want to get across, and this applies to the entire state, is that parents have the right to engage in curriculum adoption, be part of board appointed advisory committees, to vote on recommendations to your school board, And your district must have significant engagement with parents, and this is true for all of California. So the right to engage, review, make recommendations to their district on curriculum, books, and budgets. That's what all California public school parents have the right to do.
And if you ask
and
for
you
these
but you
things-
have to advocate for those rights.
Right. You have to
Yeah.
advocate for it. And if you ask for it and they try to brush you off or try to explain why you don't have a right to see that, or like I said, just brush you off and not give you what you're requesting, just keep requesting it because you
Yep.
do have a right to it. And that's another thing, when it says significant parent involvement, I can say in the recent year plus of school board meetings, year and a half, 2 years we've been going to, in community events, it is a small percentage of the parents in our district that are there engaging, speaking, even sending emails. So if you are able to show up to the school board meetings, our next Cajon Valley one is Tuesday, not today, but a week from today.
1 week from today. Yep.
We will post the agenda when it comes out. Usually comes out about Friday. We'll get that posted with a reminder, but parents showing up and speaking, even just being in the room listening, is really important. And then they create advisory committees, parent advisory committees that you can get involved in at a little bit of a higher level, where you're showing up to a smaller meeting and having direct input into the programs and like the safety program, the sex ed curriculum. But we need parents to show up and do that, because if it's the few that do, they kind of like stop listening to you. They're like, oh great, it's her again. She comes and speaks every month. But if we have more parents showing up from more schools, that's really powerful.
Yeah, public comment. So public comment is required on every one of our agenda items before the board even deliberates on something. So the law is that we should hear from the public first before we start talking about anything, about any item that shows up on our agenda. And the only time that the board is able to act with authority and legitimacy is when we have an open meeting and an agenda that's properly posted to the public. The public can come in and give comment before we deliberate. And the other way parents can engage, because I know some parents work and they can't make it to school board meetings. If you have concerns about the curriculum in your child's classroom, or like any surveys or screenings that may be being done, evaluations on your child, the teacher training that may have been done, especially with regard to like curriculum, staff to student interaction, that immediately involves the parent. As soon as you're talking about a student in a district, it involves the parent. So if staff training touches on that,
Hold on a sec. It's reconnecting. Okay.
we're reconnected. So if staff training touches on parental notification or anything staff to student interaction related, parents have the right to see that. And Heather asked a good question. A lot of school districts are seeking restraining orders against parents who ask for materials. How do you get around that? It came, no, it didn't come close, but I wouldn't have been surprised if my own district, sought a restraining order for me asking about this teacher training material that I'll post in the comments, which confirmed a lot of our concerns. Like, we had a lot of propaganda go up in all the classrooms in our district, not all the classrooms, but the vast majority,
Especially the
middle school classrooms, GLSEN propaganda. And it was like framed like it was, the teachers on their own organically wanting to create a safe place for the students in the schools. And like, oh, who could argue with that? School must be a safe place for all students. That is an absolute fact. That is truth. So, but then it has links to glisten.org, and then they're soliciting. Glisten.org solicits donations and private information from the kids and offers them money to share even more private medical information with other groups. And then there's the link on a poster in the 6th grade classroom or the library. And even now, as these are coming down, because they've been in violation of our advertising and promotional materials policy, it's being framed like, the teacher's right to express their care and concern for students is being removed. It's like, no, what happened is we trained our teachers in this propaganda, right? That to post this in the classroom. And it had curriculum, it had surveys and screenings that gathered private information from kids, and it didn't involve parental notification or review before that was placed in the classroom. So it's just invalid. It just needs to be invalidated, and it needs to be almost like we need to have a additional training or something to
kind of like iron it out.
Yeah, because right now a lot of teachers and they come to our board meetings and express this, feel like I may be the only person that student confided in. They may not have a safe place at home. They may not feel safe confiding in their parents. And I'm not just a teacher. Sometimes I act in the role of parent or counselor. And I think when they say counselor, I don't know if they mean like education counselor, because counselors at schools, counselors at middle schools, high schools, they're like career and education focused, right? It's not like when you go to
like
the mental health clinic and you have like a HIPAA confidentiality between you and a doctor of psychology, to help you through your mental health struggles or whatever, as an example. But it more and more, it seems like they want to help kids with their, more mental health struggles at school, which is, I think it's important to remember in California, the California Department of Education, every department in the Department of Education is something of public instruction, right? And we are local educational agencies. So our operation as a district, as a local education agency, is to educate students and keep them safe. Those are our operations. The state guidance, the state departments, the state support that comes down is to help us train our staff and to deliver public instruction, not to be a government mental health clinic for kids, right?
I can see the good intentions, but yeah, it's like a very slippery slope, I think, the whole thing.
So a lot of school districts are seeking restraining orders against parents.
So I would say when it comes to that, definitely try really hard. When it's very frustrating sometimes at the meetings and I see parents and community members get heated, I think really try hard not to give them an excuse to file a restraining order. Like if you're freaking out, yelling at the superintendent or yelling at staff, like just don't give them a reason. Be very composed at the meetings, be respectful at the meetings. It goes a lot further. The parents that come with composure, and I feel like their speeches are a lot more powerful than the ones where, and I get it. Like I said,
requesting
it's
or
frustrating.
curriculum, I wouldn't recommend you start by going to the board to request
just email
for
and
curriculum.
request it. I think getting it in writing is important too.
This is what I would do. If you have a concern about curriculum, teacher training materials, videos, assemblies, handouts, screenings, surveys, evaluations, anything having to do with the education of your child or parental notification, email the teacher, the principal, and the superintendent. Just one email and request. Just say, I would like to request to review the curriculum, teacher training materials, books, a catalog of the books being used, any screening surveys or examinations that you'll be giving to my child. And the district must afford you that opportunity to review under state and federal law. And they'll try to throw you off of that. I'm watching La Mesa Spring Valley do it now. I went through about 3 months of it in my district. But just remain on that request and just follow up and follow through until you have a chance to review. That's what I said that earlier.
Follow up and follow through until you have a chance to review. I feel like we're like, sign.
And it's just a simple, you don't have to argue about side stuff. Like I saw my superintendent and La Mesa Spring Valley superintendent try to make it about totally unrelated topics. And it's like, no, I'm just staying with this request right here. I'm going to stand on that request and, let me know when I can come in and review it. A week or 3 or a month passes by. Hey, following up, just want to know when I can come in and review this, or you can send me the links to review this, teacher training and that sort of thing.
It's very similar to the YMCA when parents who had 6th graders that went to Camp Marston YMCA that came back with traumatic stories about like pronouns and counselors, and one kid had a pat down story that was later retracted. So was some weird stuff up at Camp Marston, and the parents were totally in the same situation when it came to asking, okay, well, who were the counselors that my child interacted with and who slept in the cabin with my kid? They refused to provide that, and they kind of gaslight the parents and like change it to what the parents are doing wrong. What are you going to do with this information? And it's like, it's their child.
Yeah, they refused to share their overnight camp policies.
Yeah, they refused even
Ridiculous.
to share their policies, the YMCA. We got our hands on them because somebody had them from prior to them taking them off the
Yeah, they
internet.
scrubbed it from the internet. They were proud of them, and then they scrubbed them from the internet, just like they deleted their 6-year-old Instagram account that was also engaged
That was
like
the
Glisten.
YMCA North, right?
Yeah, Our Safe Place North, which was the YMCA and San Diego Youth Services, did the same exact offer that Glisten did. $20 e-gift card for 12-year-olds to go secret shop their doctors and report back to the Trans Youth Project so that the Trans Youth Project could bring education to doctors in San Diego County. So the groomer cartel, like I've been saying, and that's what's kind of filled in this vacuum where the state has said, the state in Escondido, the teachers sued the state too because they were saying, well, the state is also, the district and the state are requiring us to deceive parents about their child.
But that
and
was
we've been
their
teaching
attorneys
for
saying
50
that,
years
right?
between the two of us.
That was their
Yeah,
attorneys
that was
saying
that was the case, and the state tried to get out from under it by saying, well, it's just guidance. And the attorney Paul Jana for the teachers said, well, Rob Bonta is suing Chino Valley right now over this same policy, AR 5145.3, and them trying to fix the issue with, where they created a situation where district staff thought it was acceptable just to keep secrets about other people's children from their parents. So Chino tried to fix it first. The state came down on them. Well, the state was like, well, we're the Department of Education and Rob Bonta is with the Department of Justice, and they're doing that on their own. They're suing Chino on their own. So the court basically asked, like, if the California Department of Education were to bring a lawsuit or to be defending itself in court, which department in the state would, represent the California Department of Education? And they were like, oh, well, that would be Rob Bonta in the California Department of Justice. And it's like, okay, the state is not, getting let off the hook here. That injunction, the preliminary injunction, was placed on the state and Escondido Unified School District because even though the state is arguing, which I agree with the state's argument in that case, that this is just guidance. We aren't requiring teachers to keep secrets from parents or district staff
because
members.
there are laws that prevent
Agreed.
them from doing so.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Like state, federal law, even the law that this administrative regulation is based on doesn't create that confidentiality between any district staff member and a student. So I think we're all in agreement on that. And I think in a lot of districts' cases, if we had like a parent advisory committee, which all of our boards can form for any reason, you can form an ad hoc committee to a parent advisory committee to talk about the, squirrel problem at Crest School. We actually have a ground squirrel problem there that's causing flooding on the lower field. The ground squirrel problem is just a small part of the whole thing, but anyway, you could form an ad hoc committee to answer a lot of questions. So you form a parent advisory committee to vote on recommendations to the board about, how do you think the state, the district, should notify you about concerns pertaining to your child? Those are the people we should ask. And that's the other thing right now, the teachers union at the state and federal level, so the American Federation of Teachers through Randy Weingarten and the California Teachers Association president, they're going to, they're speaking on these issues. The California Teachers Association president just a few weeks ago went to one of these districts who's trying to fix this issue with confidentiality between staff and students and from parents, and legally threatened the board for doing this. Again, this is a parent notification issue. This is staff and student interaction, which is, again, the parent's domain. But the state and federal teachers union are trying to make it an issue of, I guess, bargaining, like for, that their domain is like labor and benefits and, compensation packages and working conditions and schedules. It's not, we demand the right to keep secrets from parents about their children. Like they have no jurisdiction there, but they're threatening school districts with lawsuits over them correcting their parental notification policies.
Well, even though we demand the right to hang flags in our classroom, when there have been court cases like in Poway where the teacher couldn't have "In God We Trust" in really big letters in his classroom. So it goes both ways. It's just like a teacher we heard speak last week that lost her job because she said, "No, I won't allow boys in the locker room with girls. That goes against my religious beliefs." And they had to say, we can't accommodate your religious beliefs, and she lost her job. So
yeah, and they probably couldn't accommodate that teacher's religious beliefs and follow the state law, because the state law says
it's sad, but
that any child. But the thing is about the locker room situation is it's all children. So if your child for any reason wants private locker room or restroom accommodations, you can request that. And the guidance even says, due to the sanctity of your religious beliefs, because religion is still protected under
for the students,
the law,
especially.
Yeah, so if you're concerned that the sanctity of your family's religious beliefs would be violated with your daughter changing in the middle or high school locker room and finding herself next to someone of the opposite biological gender to her, you can let your school's principal know. Just send them an email. I would like my son or daughter to have private locker room or restroom accommodations. That's all you have to do. That's not all you have to do. I'm sure you'll get pushback from most districts, but the rules are on your side there if you're concerned.
Like there's religious rights as well as gender identity. So that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, because there's so much emphasis on one side right now.
And Heather says it should have been protected for that teacher. Well, no, Heather, and I know, I get it, the argument, but the district has the right to use its own speech through teachers, and the state law requires that they accommodate kids in the boys or girls locker room regardless of their biological gender if they so please. But again, the guidance also requires that if a parent's uncomfortable with that, which we had happen in a neighboring district in Lakeside where I went to middle school, Tierra del Sol Middle School, and the president of the Lakeside board went to Tierra del Sol Middle School, and the parents called because they were concerned that their boy was in the locker room changing and there was a biological female next to him. And they basically, from what I'm told the parents, well, that's the law, you're going to have to deal with it. But in reality, the notification should have probably been something like, if you would like your son to have private locker room or restroom accommodations, then we can accommodate that.
Yeah, yes, it is the law that child can use that locker room, but your child also under the same law is protected if they want private accommodations.
Heather asked a great question, but aren't they taking away her First Amendment right? Well, she is a teacher, so she doesn't have First Amendment rights at school, which probably sounds a little shocking to the ears and sensibilities. But the district gets to deliver the public instruction. The local education agency gets to deliver the education. The teacher, when they are in school, taking roll call or dealing in the pickup line or delivering public instruction, that speech is not theirs. That speech belongs to the district, which is the government, and the government gets to choose what it says. And that's based on the court ruling in Poway, where a math teacher had "In God We Trust" and different, sayings that are associated with Americana, but the Poway School District said, look, this isn't serving our educational interests as a local educational agency. You have to take it down. He sued on his First Amendment rights. So did the Escondido Unified School District teachers. That was one of their claims, is that, you're forcing us to keep secrets from parents about their children. That violates our First Amendment rights. That was one of their claims that the court basically shot down and said, no, teachers don't have the First Amendment when they are, working as a teacher. if you're at a staff meeting after school hours, that's different. But at school, the government gets to choose what it says. The government meaning the school district. So it's kind of, I mean, again, it sounds kind of offensive to American sensibilities. Like, teachers don't have the First Amendment when they're teaching. Well, it's just true, though.
Well,
A
and
lot
it's kind of the
of
same.
government employees don't have the First Amendment when they are at work.
Well,
Many
a lot
government
of
employees.
in general. That's one of the things Anthony
Yeah.
said before. Like, if you work for Starbucks and you're working the register and you start spewing off your religious or political views to customers, you're going to get a warning, but you're probably going to lose your job if you keep it up because you're working for them, you know. So it's,
Yeah.
your First Amendment rights are limited when you're being paid to do a job.
Yeah, and then as far as like and Heather says, but the rights are upheld for kids. Yeah, so the Supreme Court's ruled twice in the last 60, 70 years that students don't shed their rights when they walk through the schoolhouse gate. So public school students are not there as employees, right? So they have rights to a free public education in California and in the United States. And if there's not like school dress code or policy that prevents it, then kids have their First Amendment rights. They could wear a vote for Joe Biden shirt. A teacher probably not in most public schools in California.
Not during
They
the
could
school
pass
day.
out, vote for Make America Great Again hats at lunch even, which like a lot of people, especially on the left, would be like, oh my gosh, no
Well,
way.
technically, they try to
you
stop
know.
that too. Because remember when Brighton was giving out the "Let Them Breathe" letter?
Yeah, so like they
They-
can, if they're not disrupting the learning environment and they're
Can't do
not
it
breaking
in
dress
class.
code, so if like kids are allowed to wear hats at school, or even even if they're not allowed to wear hats at school, if a kid's handing out hats and they're putting them in their backpacks, I mean, if kids start putting on the hats, then the school might be able to say, well,
Violating
they're
a policy.
he's handing out things that if the kids put them on, they're violating our dress code. But let's make it shirts. Kids are handing out shirts. Kids are putting them in their backpacks that say something that's not profane or disruptive to the learning environment. But kids can't go and put posters on the wall that would violate the district's right to have speech. So they can't go in their library and hang a poster or in their classroom and hang a poster. Neither can their parents, and neither can teachers, in my view, unless it's something the district approves, especially if it's advertising an outside organization such as Glisten in our school district's case. But yeah, it is kind of interesting that, to say students have their First Amendment rights in school to the extent it doesn't disrupt the learning environment, it's not profane. And that includes like handing out buttons or flyers at lunchtime in a lot of cases, or shirts. But teachers do not have those same rights until it's after school hours, and they're not in charge of students anymore. When teachers are in charge of students, they are working as a government employee, right? And so the district gets to have a say in what they say, what sort of curriculum they deliver, and ultimately the parents in that district, under California state law, get to have significant engagement in what books, what curriculum, what things are done. So like
You say
hindsight
get
being
to have, but I think
must have.
must have, yes. But my point is, you don't get them if you don't show up, though, and you don't send
Yeah.
the emails and you don't ask the questions, because otherwise they're like, oh yeah, we tried to engage parents and they didn't come, so we did whatever we wanted. So that's our responsibility as parents, is to show up, to ask questions, to send emails, make phone calls, and to be involved in any way you can, whether it's getting on a school board, talking with your friends at a play date, or you join your PTO and you volunteer at school just so you can kind of see what's going on campus. Whatever you can do to help protect our kids, our parental rights, our freedoms at school, I think that it's important that we all do what we can.
Yeah, and it's great that a lot of parents are activated and like, what can we do? Like I said, you can show up to the school board, comment on items on the agenda, or even items that aren't on the agenda but are under the jurisdiction of the school district. You can come and give public comment so your board members hear you. If you can't show up to the meeting, your school board members' emails should be on the district website, along with your superintendent and your school's principal. So you can get all the school board members, the superintendent, and the principal's emails from your district website here in California, and you're free to email all of them with your concerns. Sometimes, you don't want to be like the parent who cried wolf to the school board
Like
every
all the
time.
time.
So the best place to start is your child's teacher, the principal, and the superintendent. You can put all three of them on an email requesting curriculum, expressing a concern. And that I think will have a huge moderating effect on a lot of the crazy teacher training and curriculum and surveys and examinations that a lot of parents are finding out after the fact. Oh my gosh, you asked my kid what at school? What legitimate educational purpose did that serve? That's what I think the La Mesa, Spring Valley, the Murdoch parents are going through right now. And there was probably a teacher training over the summer. So this teacher is probably acting in good faith and in what she thinks are the best interests of her students and their safety by introducing them to radical gender ideology and telling them, I can call you a different name and pronouns in class than I do in front of your parents. That has been sold as safety in our district trainings lately, because we've allowed activist radical groups to kind of fill in the void, right? The state passed the laws, and then these activist radical groups have kind of interpreted them to allow for like maximum data mining of other people's children through public schools and trying to recruit these kids as activists or solicit donations or very private information from them to further their agenda, further their narrative. And that's the part the governor is clever not to talk about, the fact that there was like an institutional statewide level training, curriculum, resources, videos that were pushed out by these NGOs and circumvented the board's curriculum adoption process, the required significant parent engagement under state law prior to the adoption of curriculum, textbooks, books. And that's one thing I wanted to say too. Hindsight being 2020, and these districts who have led the charge for parental rights, like Chino, Rockland, Temecula, Murrieta, Orange, like they're going first and they're getting, they're becoming targets of the ire of the state. Now, hindsight being 2020, here's what I think. If any of them had appointed a parent advisory committee to vote on recommendations, and it seems like these communities of parents were probably of the same mind as a lot of parents are. It seems like a 70 to 80% of parents agree that like the state shouldn't keep secrets about their child from them. Get a parent advisory committee to vote on recommendations to the board on the policies, on the curriculum, on the textbooks, whatever it is. Do you want your child being taught about Harvey Milk in a way that is positive and only shows the positive side of it in fourth grade, which was, I think, kind of the Temecula issue. And the board president in Temecula said, this guy, why would we teach them about a pedophile? And then like he caught the ire of the governor, the state superintendent, the state attorney general, and then they were threatening them with like millions of dollars in fines and all this crap. I think, again, hindsight being 2020, so I can play Monday morning quarterback here. I think if they had said, we're going to appoint a parent advisory committee of, second, third, fourth grade parents and ask them, this is the curriculum, here's the supplementals.
What would you?
The board would like to know. How would you like us to teach your children this in our public school? That the state would have had a much more difficult time like prosecuting any case against Temecula or Chino or Rockland.
Like parental rights are like the foundation of it all. So like we need to assert them, I think, is the issue.
And it can be an email to your principal and your superintendent, and then wait sometimes months to actually get a response, but just stick with it. Politely agitate for your rights as a parent.
Another thing too, for parents that work or have a million sports every day, like I know a lot of you do, we do. If you can't make it to a meeting, they do Zoom stream a lot of the meetings, and even after the fact, Anthony and I will record them and post them on YouTube and then share them on social media. So I know they're long and it's hard sometimes to sit and listen to the whole thing, but if you're driving to work and you just turn it on and listen, you're folding laundry, you just turn it on and listen. You don't have to sit and watch the video, you can just listen to it. Also, when Anthony posts it, he will put timestamps usually to the hot topics for parents, because a lot of the meeting is just, regular business and you're sitting for a while, but he'll put timestamps like sex ed curriculum at 44 minutes or YMCA camp, overnight camp vote at 56 minutes, board reports at an hour and a half. So that way you can go to where your concerns are and kind of listen. Also, the public comment is always really, really important, because you hear from parents, you hear from community members. They ask a lot of questions about the contracts and the budgets and the curriculum, and so he always timestamps that too. But definitely listening to those, I think, is really important, no matter what school district your kid's in. However,
Yeah, and aim for heaven, start at home, right? So in your own district, you have parents, in your own school rather, you have parent leaders, and like connect with them, because you're not alone in your concerns, right? That's what the La Mesa Spring Valley parents at Murdoch Elementary found out, is like, and they had 70 people on their Zoom meetings because a lot of these parents of elementary schoolers were, shocked and concerned about what their kids were being taught in the first and second week of school. And then, it caused the board to hire a consultant to do an investigation. And then like the superintendent sent out this letter that kind of obfuscated a lot of things that the parents were asking for with, teacher training, curriculum, surveys, examinations that their kids went through. And I don't know that the district has responded to them yet, because it's been a month and a half. But even in that scenario, it's like, oh, it's been 45 days. I guess we're not going to get it. No, stay on your request. Again, politely agitate for your rights. I want to see the curriculum, the teacher training, the screenings, the surveys, the examinations, the videos, assemblies, books that are being used in the education of my fifth grader at Murdoch Elementary, for example. But this could apply to any school in the state, any public school in the state. And that's just an email with some follow-ups every couple of weeks for potentially months. But then you get a hold of the teacher training and you see where, like we did in Cajon Valley, you see where the problems started, where teachers were trained that they didn't have to notify parents, where they were trained that they could just bring in curriculum from radical groups like HRC and, teach it to kindergartners about gender expansiveness, for example. Can parents take any legal action against the school if the requests aren't followed through on? I'm not a lawyer, but I would say probably, in my own uneducated guess, yeah, because if the state law says that the district must be responsive to this request and the district refuses over a period of time, I think a parent would have.
I would guess though, like
a basis
demand letter from an attorney would probably be all it would take. I don't have any legal experience either. I'm just guessing, but I feel like if there are laws protecting it, that might be.
A letter might be
all it would take.
Because attorneys, they can cite the law and be like,
what to cite. Yeah, and so.
And they can, I know there are a lot of attorneys who are helping in this fight, for parent rights, parent notification, including Paul Jana and Lamandry and Jana. They're notching some huge wins, and they're supported by the law in the state, right? They're supported by the Constitution and Supreme Court rulings. So that's really, like you said, it's the foundation of it all is parental notification and involvement rights in the budget, curriculum, it more so than the teachers unions. And that's what I want to point out. The teachers unions, they're the presidents of the teachers unions, I think, should focus on, are my members, well compensated? Are their schedules, what they would like? Are they in a safe, workplace?
Are they being treated?
Their members, right. That's who they represent. But there's like a lot of crossover right now where they're like, well, we govern the staff to student relationship too. It's like, no, you don't. Actually, that is governed by parents in the district and the people who elect the school boards. And it's, the parental rights and involvement requirements in state and federal law are clear, and like any attempt to correct the issues we have in our district being met with the union threatening to sue is ridiculous when it comes to, again, staff to student interactions and the parent to child relationship. That's the domain of the parent and the governing board,
who was elected by the parents.
Union presidents, Randy Weingarten at the AFT, instead of going on a read banned books tour trying to expose other people's children to kink, with like books like Genderqueer, they like have this bus they're traveling on.
Weird.
And the Read Banned Books Week that is going on right now, hopefully not in your school's library, but I would check if there's like a Read Banned Books thing that your public school librarian may be doing. I would definitely, if your kids are in middle school or high school, would look into that. Because they're on like this, almost like a crusade where they think they have to like fight for the right to expose other people's children to, what they want to say, which is not.
Imagine if they did like Read Your Bibles Week and they had like Bibles for all the kids. People would be freaking out. Like you can't,
oh my gosh.
You can't have one and not the other, guys.
No, yeah,
you
shouldn't use the walls of public schools to promote any religious, political, or sexual group. As a teacher, as a student, as a parent, as a religious or political leader, that's not what the walls of public schools are for. That's not what.
To start clubs if they want to about some of those things.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be using the walls of the
like during
classroom or the library.
Like separate.
If the walls of your middle school library this week say read banned books, I would, as a parent, I would challenge that and say, whose speech is that? Is the district telling my child to read, books that I don't want them to read? Is that what's happening here? And let me see a catalog. Let me see the library catalog. What books are on the read banned books list? I want to challenge them. If there's an issue by our
board,
right,
with significant parent involvement. No. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Imagine.
Sorry guys, that doesn't work.
I like to compare it to like if I were, if you look at Genderqueer as like one of the main examples, if I were a children's author and illustrator and I were drawing pictures like what are in Genderqueer of, kids engaged in sexual acts with each other, that, and I was like going to the schoolyard and like, hey kids, look at this drawing I drew. Like, I'd probably be going away in a freaking police car, and for
they'd be like, you can't live within 3 miles
distributing
of a
pornography
school ever
to children.
again.
Yeah. So, but you can push it in through the libraries, right? You can, or at least they think they can.
Think about somebody like actually writing those and drawing them, and they're like, ooh, this one's gonna top seller right here. Like what?
Yeah. Weird. And the fact that you push it through one channel makes it acceptable, but again, if like somebody were like set up a booth in front of the school and had those illustrations in the pickup line, I don't think it would be well received by the parents.
No, the moms
of the
would
district.
be pissed.
The
moms would be like tearing that booth down.
Yeah, then the parents as a whole could come together and send districts letters from allure. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it takes that level though. Like literally, I think it's as simple as
it eventually
email the teacher, the principal, and the superintendent, make your request clear and concise, follow up. If a few months go by and you still haven't, had a response, and there's, a group of parents who get to that point, which I imagine there may be, if enough parents start to do this, then I think, legal involvement would be helpful from some. And I think at that point you could go to some of these advocate lawyers and say, look, we made a simple request to see the curriculum and the teacher training materials and the supplementaries to that and worksheets, evaluations, things that they're doing with students in the schools. And it's been 3 months and they've been non-responsive. Like,
make sure you get your requests in writing and just respond
email.
To the same email. Just following up on my email, my request still stands. Just following up on my email. There are opt-out forms for certain things. I think there's
There's an opt-out
generic
form for
opt-out
comprehensive
form
sex
too,
ed,
right?
but in Cajon Valley in particular, and Heather, obviously, I know you're in Cajon Valley with us, but this is probably true. This was true for Escondido, it seems, and probably a lot of districts in the state. Teachers in the last couple of years have been trained that like parental notification is, there's less requirements than there actually are. That's what our district did with David Olson's creating inclusive classrooms training. It was
Well, it
like,
sounds like
it has a
Escondido,
slide that I'll post. It has a slide parental notification. And basically, you know, based on my English comprehension reading it, and I'm a teacher, it's like, oh, I only have to notify the parents if I'm teaching sex ed or talking about STDs. But if I want to talk to them about gender expansiveness and kindergarten or pronouns and gender identity and the gender journey and all these other things, then I don't have to involve the parents. And you do. So asking a kid, even asking a kid what their gender identity and pronouns are, there's California Education Code 51513 and the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment at the federal level. They're pretty similar, and they basically say that you can't, as a school, you can't ask someone else's child about their beliefs or practices in religion, politics, sex, mental health, or you know the mental health concerns about family members or the student themselves without active written consent from the parent, which should also include, hey, here's the screening we want to give your kid. Here are the questions.
That would be active.
Do you consent to us asking your kid these questions about, you know, their gender identity or their beliefs or practices in religion, politics, sex, or any of these things? And then the parent would give active consent. So it's not an opt-out in that scenario, like at Murdoch or in La Mesa Spring Valley with San Diego Youth Services, where they're doing a behavioral health screening on pre-K through third graders, universal behavioral health screening. They're having the teachers do it, but they're not telling the parents and getting active written consent before. They're not sharing with the parents the blank screening or even the results of the screening that their teacher completed on their child about their behavioral health, which teachers aren't really being trained to do that, but this is what they're doing. And they were doing it in Cajon Valley. We kicked San Diego Youth Services out. They were doing it in Grossmont, Union High School District, universally screening kids for suicidality after showing them a video. Grossmont Union kicked them out or didn't renew with them.
Well, and the reason that they got kicked out of the school districts, or at least one of the reasons Anthony brought to his board, was that there was a video, there were certain materials that they refused to share with the board.
For proprietary reasons. They show students these things.
They would show to students, but they would refuse to show the board and the parents.
Yep.
And then in addition to that, they refused to provide a list of places they might refer your kids to. So
yeah, and that's like, you know,
weird.
The universal response from the YMCA when we said, let me see your sixth grade overnight camp policies.
Can't see that.
No. Let's see this video you show our 7th and 8th graders before you hand them this referral card that says, based on this video, I would like to talk to someone about myself or a friend. It's a video on suicidality, and if they check that box, then San Diego Youth Services interns are starting to interact with these 7th or 8th graders or high schoolers. Or if a teacher, you know, checks certain numbers on this behavioral health screening for the pre-K through third graders, again, San Diego Youth Services is getting involved in making potential referrals to behavioral health services, right?
To who? We don't know.
It's like, no list it's absolute quackery. But again, if you stand on parent rights there, if you say, hey, school board, you never had the authority to offer my children up via passive consent for a universal behavioral health screening / referral scheme, my pre-K through third grader.
Passive consent, remember it was in that 50-page packet, and it said that the information was on a different page, but the information wasn't actually included, and you were signing it. But
the opt-out form.
It didn't have the opt-out form.
Yeah, it says an opt-out form is included, and
there was no opt-out form.
Oh, there isn't one.
So it was like not even passive consent; it was like deceitful consent.
Yeah. So districts, these NGOs like San Diego Youth Services, like Glisten, they're operating outside of the rules with regard to curriculum adoption, parental notification, and involvement, and so, you know, that's a problem, but it's a problem we can solve as parents by just standing on our rights and saying, no, you're not going to offer my kid up via passive consent for a behavioral health screening in the pre-K through third grade level. You're not going to keep the results of that screening of my child a secret from me, but share it with an outside organization who's going to look to make referrals. And that's when they'll come and talk to the parent of the pre-K through third grader, is when they say, we think your child could really benefit from this. And in Cajon Valley and La Mesa Spring Valley, they're targeting the socioeconomically disadvantaged schools, high refugee population schools first, as though, anyway, it's quackery is what it is. It's not what school is designed to do. School is there to educate children, to deliver public instruction, to train staff, not to screen, diagnose, or treat students, except in rare occasions with heavy parental involvement. Like our district has 15,000 students. We hire psychologists each year to help, those kids who definitely, out of 15,000 kids, you're going to have kids who need various levels of support, right? But that involves, especially in the K through 8 level, it involves the parents the whole time. Even at the high school level, if you have a kid who, is psychologically disadvantaged, I'm not sure if I'm using the right term there, or whatever it is, then there's a partnership between the school and the parent or guardian there that's going to help that kid the most and keep them safe, not driving a wedge between parents and children and keeping secrets with outside organizations instead.
Well, because like I mentioned, like if you don't involve the parents, you could be keeping resources away from the child that their parent might have access to. You're preventing them maybe from getting to see a very good psychologist, psychiatrist, or their primary care physician, or whoever they need to talk to about this if you don't involve their parent, because their parent should have access to all of those services.
Yeah, and if they're going to shut down schools because of a pandemic or a hurricane or a labor strike, you definitely want that child to have consistent support from school to home, right? That's what you want to have, ideally, in pretty much all cases, except when the kid's being abused. School's not 24/7. Schools have shut down for extended periods of time in California, because of the pandemic, because of the labor strikes. And that's always a looming threat over most school districts because of the fact that we, have public sector unions who staff our schools. So the idea that those same unions who know that they can shut down an entire district because of a strike or because of concerns about working conditions with regard to a pandemic for extended periods of time, and actually advocated to shut the schools for extended periods of time, and downplayed when parents were saying, hey, our kids are suffering socially, emotionally from being out of school. Kids are resilient, they're fine. Well, now they want to fix this problem of youth mental health in public school apart from the child's parent. It's like, no, that's a horrible idea across the board. So how about we don't do that?
One, it's against the law.
Yeah, stay in your lane, teachers union. I think these and I'm not talking, again, when I say the teachers union, I'm not talking about teachers. I'm talking about their representatives and what they're focusing on. They would do much better for their members to focus on working conditions and, pay and compensation and schedules, that sort of thing, benefits. And stop trying to pit teachers against parents in this, the state's gonna keep secrets from children. It's like, you're in a domain you shouldn't be within a mile of as a teachers union representative. And really it's causing a trifecta of harm, and in reality it's pissing a lot of parents off across the spectrum. And who are these parents interacting with? Their child's teacher. It's like, why are we training those teachers to be in this, to create this sort of adversarial
divide between them and the parents?
It's not serving anyone. It's a trifecta of harm for the students, parents, and teachers. I agree with that federal court ruling on it. So
absolutely.
So, okay, I think I'm done.
Do you think that that's all? Was that all we wanted to cover? We do have the school board meeting coming up on Tuesday. I did share a link to the YouTube of all the speeches from last week's event in Simi Valley. It was a really awesome event, put on by PERC, which is, what is it again? Protection. I'm not remembering right now. I'm tired. PERC and the California Policy Center.
Great organizations.
Lance Christensen was a big part of putting it on. Sonia Shaw was there. There were representatives from all different backgrounds. There was a physician that spoke, the teacher that was fired that spoke. So I did record most of the speeches and I uploaded that to YouTube. So that's on my page if you guys are interested in watching. What else is coming up? I feel like we've had like the craziest about month or 5 weeks behind us, and I feel like I'm like forgetting something because
there's quite a few
there's
things we could have
something
touched
coming
on,
up.
but we're already an hour and something into it.
we
So
like to talk. There's a lot though. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to uncover, a lot to really wrap your head around.
But I think the action items is like, if you're a parent and you're concerned about books, curriculum, teacher training, email your teacher, principal, and superintendent. That's like an action step you can take, and just one email going out and a follow-up every 2 weeks until you've been given the opportunity to review the curriculum, the teacher training materials, the videos. I think in the case of La Mesa Spring Valley, where they're, parents are asking the board to end the relationship with San Diego Youth Services, and the board's like, no, we're going to expand it to more schools. I think if those parents simply asked, let me see the video, let me see the screenings, let me see any of the teacher training materials that San Diego Youth Services uses.
The list of potential referral partners.
Yeah, they're
the list of potential services that could be offered within these referrals.
Yeah, ask for those things and just stand on that request and keep following up every couple weeks. If a couple months go by, let me know, let all of us know, and we're going to try to, make some noise about it and get, people, if need be, people who understand the law and can send letters to these districts advocating for the rights of parents to review these things. But I would really start there. Start with your teacher, principal, superintendent. Let them know your concerns. Request to review the training materials and curriculum and supplementals and everything else having to do with the education of your child, including questions they would ask the child in surveys, screenings, evaluations.
I'd add to the action item list to start listening to or going to your board meetings. Like I said, you don't always have to listen to them while they're live. I know in Cajon Valley we share ours after the fact. I think Grossmont Union does too. I'm not 100% sure on the other districts, but
Grossmont shares theirs as well. Yep.
Just listen and start paying attention. It'll perk your ears up to what you're passionate about fighting for, or something that might cause a red flag for you that you can go speak out on or write an email for.
Yeah, and then at that point, if you see something go on at the board meeting in a board discussion or a public comment and you agree, again, your board members' emails should be on your district website in California, and your superintendent. You as a parent are welcome to email your entire school board. Say, hey, I listened back to this last meeting. I agree with, the public comment on parental notification or whatever, and let the board know. Also, if your district is stonewalling you in your request to review curriculum or teacher training materials, and a month has gone by, that would be a good point to email the governing board, because we govern the district based on the policies. We don't have direct control over teachers or principals. We have one employee who is the superintendent, so we're kind of at the 30,000 foot level. But if there's an ongoing, what you think is a violation of the policies that we're governed by, to allow parents to review curriculum and teacher training materials, then you can let your board know, hey, I've been asking, it's been over a month, and I've not been given the opportunity to review these things. Let the board know at that point, and perhaps at that point they can let the superintendent, who is their one employee, give them some direction, if you will. And I think
you also, as a parent, have the right to request an agenda item. So if there's something big that has gone on at your school that you want on the agenda for the board to discuss or vote on, you definitely have a right to email them and ask for an agenda item. I think it has to be like 2 weeks before the meeting.
I think in our policy, yeah, but throughout the state, that's another statewide type of rule that, yeah, I think it's under the Brown Act that any member of the public can request that an item be placed on the board's agenda within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. And the board president email would go to the board president and superintendent in your district. And even their non-response, like if they just ignore you, under the Brown Act, I think it's like considered their non-response is a response that, like, whatever you asked to place on the agenda did not fall under the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. So they even, like, they don't have the option to just not respond and ignore you because their non-response is considered an affirmative response that, no, we determined it's not in our purview, basically. And you can still go to the board meeting and make public comment, and feel free to mention the fact that, look, I asked that this be placed on the board's agenda 2 or 3 weeks ago and my request was not responded to, but I'm here to speak on this tonight because it's a concern I have at my child's school. And we must, again, we have to hear from the public before we even start talking on an agenda item. So that's how important public involvement, parent engagement is in the districts, but nobody's going to really tell you that, like, you're and it's not their job.
Well,
it's not the job of
the officer doesn't like tell you all. I mean, you have the right to remain silent when you're getting arrested, but when you get pulled over, they're like license and registration. How fast were you going? They're not like, you have the right to not tell me anything and wait till you have, they don't
wait till you have your lawyer.
They don't just like give you a list of all your rights. Like, that'd be really nice if they did, but most officers I don't think are going to do that. And so that's the same thing in this case. You have to know what your rights are, learn what your rights are, and advocate. Be your own advocate. It's just like when you go to the doctor or when you take your kids to the doctor, you have to be advocating for yourself and your kids. And it takes a lot of research and asking questions and talking to other parents and learning what your rights are, but you have them. Heather was asking, are surveys given to the kids during class periods that parents don't see?
It was happening in our district. It's happening in La Mesa Spring Valley currently.
As far as we know, that specific survey is gone from Cajon Valley because
it is.
Anthony brought a lot of it to the board's attention and they ended up voting to have.
Well, we didn't vote. Our staff. There's with San Diego Youth Services, their contracts, including in La Mesa Spring Valley and neighboring districts in East County, their contracts have a 30-day cancellation clause where either side can cancel. So that's how Cajon Valley did it. They did exercise that 30-day cancellation right because we had contracts that went through 2027. When Grossmont Union High School District did it, their renewal was up on the agenda and they just voted no to the renewal. So it was two different ways to achieve the same thing in La Mesa Spring Valley because their board just voted to expand this universal pre-K through third grade behavioral health screening to, I think, 5 more schools. Their request to the board, I think one would be active consent, because you never had the right in the first place to do passive consent. Active parental consent or informed consent, which I think is the most proper. An independent review board, since you are doing like this novel behavioral health sort of study on our kids, and show us a copy of the screening and the questions you're going to ask our kids and the results for our kids. And San Diego Youth Services should provide all curriculum, supplemental materials, any referral sources that they may use, and be transparent to the parents first. And I think that may have the effect of getting them out of La Mesa Spring Valley right there, because in our district, they refuse to show us videos and screenings and to be transparent with the parents. They rely on this sort of passive consent so that they can get the most amount of kids screened and funneled into whatever services they may provide or refer out. So I think that may have the effect of diminishing them hugely, and these are absolute rights that parents have, I think, to demand active consent or informed consent, better yet, informed consent, independent review board, copy of the screening before you give it to my child, and then the results afterward, and including any record of any discussion you have about my child and where you may want to refer them based on your screening results. I mean, those are things they probably won't provide, and at which point they'll lose a lot of their potential customers in these pre-K through third grade kids because their parents aren't passively consenting, and they will.
Oh, that's awesome, Chrissy. Chrissy said LCC and Boston Valley have been very transparent in their curriculum and any district thing going to students. That's really cool. Yeah, I think it's really important that we get to see that.
Well, and I want to give a shout out to LCC, and this is hearsay, but we did over the weekend, there was a student who went missing, and this was posted on social media by the RAD movement. A middle schooler went missing. The RAD movement has like just in crazy. We are so blessed to have the RAD movement in San Diego County. I feel like there should be a RAD movement in every town and county in the country. They've recovered dozens of missing. They've worked hand in hand with the sheriff's department to recover dozens of missing people, children, and they can act really quick. They have like people, who can hop on public transport, like get out there immediately while, the sheriff's department's still kind of doing the intake process, doing their interviews of the close friends and family, which is, from what I'm told, happened yesterday. Basically, student went missing over the weekend. The principal at the middle school was in communication with the RAD movement, kind of helping them with the information, the parents, and they found that girl quickly yesterday, which, seconds count in those situations, and they were activated and out there with people on the ground, basically less than 12 hours after this person was reported missing. I think
so, yeah, because she was gone for a while, but before they knew or by the time they knew, it was really quick.
Yeah, and the level of cooperation that I've heard had occurred between the principal and the RAD movement was, I think, exemplary. I would like to see that throughout our district. I know Grossmont Union High School District passed a resolution not too long ago with the intent on working with the RAD movement, and that they've seemed to have been strengthening that resolve recently as well, which I think is great. That community, the school to community connection, the more that can be bridged, the better. And I think, a lot of times you feel like you're in an adversarial position between like district administration and the parents, but there's also bridges to be built, like between your school, your principal, your child's teachers. Like we're all natural allies here, right? And we can work toward that while also, agitating for parental rights, because right now the institutions, the administrations of these districts have trained our child's teachers and principals and school staff in a way that, is offensive to parent rights. But at the end of the day, like, we're here in this community at this school together. We all have most everyone has the student's best interests at heart, and we can sort of build on that, the fact that we're all, most of us are well-intentioned.
Coming together and working together for the kids.
Yeah, and working as a community, as we always have in this country, and rejecting any outside influences who want to drive a wedge between that. And that's what we're dealing with right now. It's not so much, the teacher in the classroom as it is these outside influences who are trying to fool them into thinking that keeping parents out of very important matters is somehow safer. So
yep, that is.
Chrissy says Pete Chodsko's doing an amazing job. He really puts kids first. He's doing a great job involving parents.
Awesome.
Way to go, Pete. Love to hear it. You love to hear it. I would be remiss not to mention all three of our sons' elementary school principal Hoban. Just a gem for the Blossom Valley community.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're sad at this being our last year at Blossom Valley. It's been a great experience there. Also, Mr. Gergens at El Capitan. Our
Yeah, Principal
over
Gergen.
there
Shout out
is
to
really
these
awesome,
principals.
too. Yeah,
Kick-ass principals.
We've been blessed, I think, with the community that we have here and the parental involvement and the culture at El Cap is just, I've been really, really happy having our boys there.
And I think, parents have a role in that. We have a role in that too, right? We can't just view this as like adversarial relationship between our kids, teachers, and principals and us. That would be a failure on our part to view it that way. It's like we need to build bridges, lines of communication, and also advocate for our rights to know and be involved, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'd say politely agitate, like, which, those two words might sound opposite of each other, but, I think it works. That's like kind of my MO.
Civil disobedience kind of thing. Like, you can assert your rights and do it in a way that's not disrespectful and keep relationships intact and don't burn bridges. But
yeah, a lot of school staff, though they may have been trained differently, agree with you, and a lot of the ones who disagree, it's because they were trained to think like, no, the best practice is like the kids confiding in me and I'm keeping them safe by not letting you in on it. But
the culture since before you were even campaigning for the school board was that everything you were saying was misinformation, and you see that a lot on the internet with people that are fighting for parental rights, and it's, that's misinformation, and a lot of times it's not really misinformation. So at least in our case it hasn't been, and that's why San Diego Youth Services is no longer in our schools, for example.
Yeah, and hopefully soon to follow Spring Valley and some other East County school districts, because again, when you assert your parent rights in that scenario, I think you can win every time, but it will take, it can take months. I think it took, from start to finish, it took probably more than 6 months in Cajon Valley. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that's misinformation. Time. We don't have to show you all that, and it's like, well, actually you do have to, share this with us and the parents.
Morale.
Yeah. You know.
All kinds of
misinformation is a liberal
all kinds of
gaslighting
terms, Chrissy, you're right.
Yeah, leftist gaslighting term. Misinformation and disinformation are two, you hear someone using those terms, you can bet they're probably the ones spreading the misinformation and disinformation.
The best part is they don't ever quote your misinformation. They just say there's a lot of misinformation going around on social media.
Uh-huh, yep.
Where? Show us where. Show us the misinformation and prove it wrong.
All right, it's been an hour and a half. We better
wrap
this up.
I'm hungry, yeah. Let's go eat some lunch. All right,
okay,
see you guys.
Bye, everybody.